we wanted to give the sense of the arc of a life.
Something that transcends words.
A much greater depth of feeling.
We're in Venice.
A kind of urgency.
Open the door for me to be playful.
To experience the marriage that these two gentlemen have created in this piece can be like a life-changing experience. I'll start with the discussion on how we put the project together. First of all, a work like this is created by three factors. The organization that decides to embark on the project, the composer, and then the person that creates the text. And I'm really thrilled with this work that Frank has chosen not to use poetry that already exists, but to create new poetry with David. I think that this is a great strength of this project that we're creating. But at the beginning, when Frank so graciously agreed to do this project, he said, "What is it you're like, and what do you like?" I think that was it. What works do you like? And so I sent him a whole list of composers that I like, and I specifically requested at that time. He said, "What would you really like to see?" I said, "Well, you know something? Orange County is a seaside community. I mean, the sea, you can't separate the Pacific Ocean from Orange County when you think about the county. I'm a great lover of the ocean, and I said I really think it would be appropriate to do something about water." And we started talking about music about water, and I said, you know, one of my favorite works of all time, both for the poetry and the music and the way it's put together, is Ralph Vaughan Williams' Sea Symphony, which is based upon the Whitman poems about the sea and about life. That's what that's how I gave a direction to Frank about what he wants to create. So I'll turn it over to him to where it goes from there.
Okay, so he called me, and as he stated, he shared a lot of music with me, music that he loved. I was happy to receive that music. It helps me to understand where he's coming from. Am I happy I got the Vaughan Williams? Of course. Does my music sound like the Vaughan Williams Sea Symphony? Not a single bar. And yet, somehow it helps me it just gives me a departure point, a place to start. So the next thing I did was to call my colleague and friend David St. John. David and I have been teaching a class together on this subject of words and music. We teach a class called Writer and Composer. So I've known him forever, and we've done this, and we thought, let's collaborate. We've taught this class together. It's time for us to also to collaborate on our own. And so we started talking about this. I shared with David John's love of the sea, and David took it from there. So maybe it's your turn.
There's a deeply personal connection in the four poems that comprise The Shore. And that's in part because I wanted to bring a kind of urgency to the voice that would become many voices in a choral setting. And I felt that there needed to be that almost urgent thread that enters in, especially with the Black Gondola section. As the voice begins to understand the encroachment of mortality. But in the opening, I wanted a kind of innocence. I wanted a kind of openness. I wanted that sense of a child at the tide pools. And it seemed to me that if I could do that, I could give Frank some room to move with the text and to really bring to bear his genius in bringing this language to life. It was also really important that Frank shared with me what would be interesting to John. And that was really, it was providential in that I also have this love of and attraction for the sea, the ocean, the shore. And it's also important as a kind of metaphor. We wanted to do something that brought each piece to the edge of something. And as one comes to the shore and looks out on the water, one considers all kinds of things. What's ahead of you in the waves, but also what's behind you in the past. And so we wanted the piece also to convey the passage of time. We wanted it to chart the course of someone's sensibility from a relatively young age to a more mature age.
David, in the tide pools, in the first movement, your first poem, you directly mention of my favorite place, Moonstone, and I immediately wrote Frank. I said, "Is this about Moonstone Beach?" And I got the answer back, "Yes, it is,"
Yes,
because it is this gorgeous place, just south of Cambria.
That's right.
And it just made such a personal connection for me. I was curious, did you go to Moonstone at all when you were writing this, or was it?
Well, I actually did. Moonstone Beach is a place where from the time my daughter, who's now 19, we would go every year of her life. And from the time she was 7, she and I would go, just the two of us, to have this time together. So I wanted that element, that way in which we don't lose that kind of awe. We don't lose that kind of excitement that the waves bring in and what they leave behind. I mean, all of our lives are taken up with what washes over us and what is left behind in our pockets, in our memories. And so I wanted that element there. And it made me so thrilled that John knew Moonstone Beach. It was one of those things that, you just go, thank you. It's just fabulous.
It shows it was meant to be.
I agree.
But the fascinating thing in just learning what you just said is that as your poetry through the work moves from a very young boy to a growing up boy to a slightly older boy in Venice, and then finally the ending section where we look at life and the redemption, you have actually, it wasn't just your thoughts of your past and so forth, but you have actually experienced your own child, a girl, who was there at Moonstone through that development in life. And that's fascinating, I think. It's very personal.
It is. And let me put it this way. I've always felt that if I could bring into a poem something authentic about my own experience, then that experience would be able to be shared by others. Whether or not it was their experience, it would resonate in a way that felt like their own experience.
The poem itself it opened the door for me to be playful. It compelled me to be playful, happily so, because of the innocence of this boy and the energy of this boy playing now that the tide's rolled out. But he also gave me this huge amount of imagery, rich imagery, the stones themselves, these fallen eyes of the moon. I haven't been there, but I just imagined the whole beach just pocked with these stones. And I picked up on that, and a lot of the music reflects that sort of, that idea of these stones falling from the sky, from the moon. And so there's this falling quality in the music, which also could be seen as reflecting the ebb and the flow of the waves as well. And I even, in my own mind, was adding things that aren't in the poem. I just added sand crabs, the way they sort of run with the waves, almost in a kind of a canonic way, one after the other, as the wave dictates. They run in and out. So all of that kind of imagery inspired this opening with these rapidly falling scales, waves of scales falling in canon with one another. So I had that for the surface energy. Suddenly we realize, because in the beginning of the poem it's just describing this boy, suddenly at that point of the asterisk we realize the speaker is that boy, now grown. And so we make a big shift in time. And so the music also makes this huge shift right here, right at this point, and changes and goes out of that playfulness and goes into a kind of a more lush, voluptuous kind of music. But it does come back. Then the boyhood comes back again. It had to end as it began with just this sense of play.